Up next, Authentically Detroit sits down with Kevin Davidson, Director of Design and Fabrication at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, to discuss their new exhibit, Detroit Jazz, The Legacy Continues, and its companion exhibit, Jazz Greats. But first, this week's hot takes come from Bridge Detroit. Prosecutor will not charge Detroit officers in Porter Burke's shooting death, and Detroit to invest $9 million in parking lots for neighborhood businesses. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the WDET studios. We are a content partner to bridgedetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Davidson.
We say thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. Today, we have the Director of Design and Fabrication at the Charles H. Wright Museum for African American History here with us, Kevin Davidson. He's joining us. Donna and Kevin, how is this blessed day finding each of you?
It's good for me.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I've been up really, really, really early. So Kevin has some news he might want to announce.
Kevin, what's the news, Kevin?
Kevin has a new brother-in-law. I guess I do too.
Oh, get out.
Yeah,
Yes.
my sister traveled to Africa, and she'd been communicating with this guy, sort of dating long distance, and he lives in Nigeria. So she went to Nigeria
And got hitched?
meet him for the first time, and yes, got hitched.
Oh, if this don't sound like a good time storyline, I don't know what does.
I picked her up from the airport this morning, and she was really, really happy. So,
And she was a married woman.
And a married woman. She's getting used to it.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. If she
Yeah.
should hear this, number one, you should send this episode
will,
to her.
I will.
So that she can hear us say, congratulations.
Yes,
That's
yes,
exciting.
definitely.
Yeah, you know what?
Definitely.
He sold their wedding clothes.
Oh,
So
wow.
he's a tailor.
Yeah.
And he
Get
was
out.
able to put together their wedding clothes and all that cool stuff. So we've got pictures. But congratulations, Cynthia. We're happy for you.
Congratulations.
I
hope
just
our
don't know what her
listeners
last
know-
name is because there's just so many letters. I'm like, I'm just going to have to call you Cynthia Davidson. You teach me how to pronounce this.
I'm going to call her Cynthia E.
E, I'm like, what does it start with?
Yes,
Cynthia E.
yes.
Cindy. We're going to call her Cindy.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I hope our listeners have put together that Kevin Davidson, he's been a guest on our show before, but Kevin Davidson is the husband of Donna Givens Davidson. So it was a lot of love in the studio tonight. I love
wife.
seeing these two together. Both of them are amazing, doing things in their own right. So we're happy to have you back on, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you. It is so good to be here in the legendary WDET studios, in front of the mic.
Doesn't it feel like real radio? When
It does. It does. And it's just, it's interesting that, our focus is on jazz because in the 80s, WDET was my motor. I mean, I listened to DET all day long, listen to jazz all day long, listen to Ed Love and
the famous Ed Love.
And that's how I found out what was going on in the clubs and, who was performing and all of that. So
when Kevin says clubs, he means jazz clubs.
Jazz clubs.
So Orlando, how are you this vacation day? It's like one of your last days off, and you came in to do some work. Thank you.
Of course, I wasn't going to miss it. I am doing well. Resting, sleeping, binge watching. I wish somebody had warned me about Euphoria on HBO. I got into that, and it's so inappropriate, but I think it's inappropriate because it shows us a level of realism and truth that if we really sit with it and continue with it, it is uncomfortable. So I've watched that. I finished House of the Dragon. Black people like to say House of Dragons.
That's what I say. That's what I say. And what is it without the S? There's more than one dragon, Orlando.
House of the Dragon. I finished it, and I can't wait for season 2. It was really well done. I hope they keep it up. I was really disappointed in how they ended the Game of Thrones franchise, the original Game of Thrones on HBO, but they're making up for it with this storytelling. The only thing that is really getting on my nerves about House of the Dragon is that it's so dark. I'm like, can HBO turn up the brightness? I can't see what's going on. Like, it's really really dark and shadow. Donna, do you watch it?
Oh,
we did.
We watched it. We watched it in real time.
Yeah.
I was, I'm such a Game of Thrones fan, and this is so much different. But I really do love it. I think that it gives you a whole different side of storytelling that I didn't know I needed until I saw it. And, it really does come down to so many themes. One of them is, what is a good woman, right? And, since I've never been somebody who was going to fulfill the stereotypical role of a good woman, stay at home, watch the kids, sweep the floors, barefoot and pregnant. That's just never been me. But it really does, do some gender bender kinds of things there that I think are really interesting. As well as, there was a lot more intermixing of races in House of Dragon than there was in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's some black Targaryens of the Valerian bloodline. The Valerian bloodline, which is...
And they really had power. They didn't show
Lord
up.
Corlys was not to be played with.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. In Game of Thrones, I think they were enslaved. It was like, oh yes, we see black people.
Right,
they are enslaved and they got free.
Yeah,
and that seems like the story we always tell. But I enjoyed the story.
In the original Game of Thrones, they were of the Dorne tribe or the Dothraki, I forget. But it was, but they were not like in power.
No, it's great to see them in power.
Yeah, so I've been resting and soul searching and thinking and writing and doing the thing that I think we're supposed to do on vacations. So It's been a good time, y'all. All right, y'all, it's time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. For Hot Takes, prosecutor won't charge Detroit officers in Porter Burks' shooting death. This is a follow-up to a story that we covered a couple weeks ago. Detroit police officers involved in the fatal shooting of a man going through a mental health crisis in October will not be charged. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy announced the decision Wednesday in the death of 20-year-old Porter Burks of Detroit, concluding that the officers acted in self-defense and in defense of others. Kim Worthy, in a statement, called Burks' death truly tragic, noting that the officers involved spent a significant amount of time trying to get Burks, who had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, to drop a knife he was wielding. Burks suddenly ran at them with the knife and covered the distance between them in approximately 3 seconds. Worthy said in the Wednesday statement, eyewitnesses to the shooting were interviewed and indicated that the police did all they could to de-escalate the situation before Mr. Burks charged at the police. Unfortunately, Mr. Burks was fatally shot by the officers in self-defense and in the defense of others. Donna, I remember when we talked about this originally, it was, as always, as this kind of story evokes, emotion, right? It was an emotionally charged conversation, and we did not know what the prosecutor would do because no one knows what Kim Worthy would do.
I was not shocked.
Yeah. So what say you, Donna? Give us.
Well, I wasn't shocked because the reality is when you look at the structure of the response, it was tragedy waiting to happen. I have never seen people in uniform de-escalate anything. If I'm having a mental health crisis and you show up with your uniforms and guns and it's about 10 of you around me, I'm going to feel like I am under attack. Mm-hmm. I'm going to feel threatened, especially if he's a black man. You're just going to feel threatened because that is how your brain works. She says, and they say the police did everything that they could do. I would say they did everything that they were trained to do. They have not got mental health training. Mm-hmm. The ACLU and others are saying that we don't want police officers to respond to mental health crises. It's unfortunate that if somebody is having a family member in crisis and they call 911, they send the police and not people who are trained to de-escalate the situation. And, in every police department, you have hostage negotiators, you have people who do have de-escalation training, but those aren't the folks who show up. And so they show up, even if they said all the right things, their presence and the way they were present in that situation create a threat. And they don't know how to read his body language and other things to understand what's about to happen. So I think that I think it's Los Angeles that just voted to stop sending police officers to mental health calls. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see the city of Detroit do the same thing. I'm not certain that charging these officers with a crime would result in a conviction. So I'm not certain it's a good use of taxpayer dollars. And it's really not a solution. The solution has to be that we find ways to support families and support people who have mental health issues and also really do a good job trying to understand the psychology. The other thing I want to talk about is this whole narrative around people charging at police officers. I mean, every time somebody is shot by a police officer, you hear that they are charging at them and they're moving with inhuman speed because, this guy, he's fast, right? He, in approximately 3 seconds, he covered what distance? Whoa, that's pretty good, right? I think sometimes people can portray a defensive response as an aggressive response. It's hard to know the difference, but I'm tired of the language that they charged at police officers and therefore we had to kill them. It feels very much like something you would say about a pit bull dog and not a human being. I hope that we give our officers better training in order to keep a safe distance from somebody wielding a weapon such that they cannot charge at them in such a way, maybe you have Jesse Owens out there with that knife, but I think that it's safe to say that there's other possible solutions. And I'm not blaming these officers. I'm blaming the structure, but I'm also looking at the way that we describe these really, really tragic incidents because
language is important.
It kind of dehumanizes the person who comes charging at me and it kind of builds this narrative of fear that is always present before people get shot, especially black men get shot by police. And as long as that fear can be believable or palpable and we use language like that, then it's always going to be justified.
Mm. Attorney Jeffrey Feiger filed a $50 million wrongful death lawsuit in October on behalf of Burks' family. And so while the prosecutor will not bring up any criminal charges, it will be interesting to see how this plays out in civil court.
Yeah.
I don't think Jeffrey Feiger takes on cases that he doesn't believe he can't win. And so I'm wondering what he sees here.
I don't know because, when you're suing institutions like the Detroit Police Department, you're not necessarily trying to win in court. You're just trying to win a settlement sometimes. So, are there attorneys who sometimes prosecute or who sometimes file cases with the goal of negotiating a settlement? Absolutely. Are there facts in the case that he believes he should take to trial? We'll see. Mm-hmm. I'm interested.
Mm-hmm. And we should note that subsequent this shooting, there has been a shooting involving the Detroit police, once again killing someone, a woman actually, who was in a mental health crisis. And
was she charging at them?
I don't have the details around that, but on our break I'll look and I'll give it back to you. But Bridge Detroit did write about it, and what we're seeing now, especially, and I don't know if it's just a sign of the times, a sign of like what's happening externally, is an uptick in these mental health calls that police are continually being asked to show up for. And so we do have Police Chief James White on record saying that there needs to be more training, and we're trying to figure out what exactly does that look like, and where will the resources come from to do that?
When people talk about training, it's always training. Somebody says something racist, and you send them to sensitivity classes, and you send
Poor
them
people,
to training.
we're going to train them out of poverty.
I think that really you have to have more policies and rules that you're going to enforce, because people change their behavior when they have to, and not when you tell them it's a really good idea and you train them to. I think it goes out. I think a statistic I saw that I think is really important is that about 50% of all police-involved killings are with people who are disabled or mentally ill. So it happens over and over and over again.
What's the one young man's name? What's his name? Elijah McClain?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So this is what happens. We need to do a better job treating and providing support for people who are dealing with mental health issues. Mental health is a healthcare condition that should never be untreated in the way that it is. But so often we are not providing adequate treatment inside of our community. We need to do a better job as a community getting people to the treatment that they need, but also understanding that, the systems need to do a better job providing quality treatment when you bring people in. And what are the emergency procedures?
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think, though, the powers that be in this city see the alternative of what you are talking about as anti-police, even though it really is not, right? When I think about the structure, and I think about the police chief, and I think about who the police chief reports to, the police chief reports to and serves up the pleasure of the mayor of the city of Detroit. Mike Duggan is a former prosecutor, right? For his last two deputy mayors, including the current one, have been police officers, James Craig and now former deputy police chief Todd Bedison. There is something to be said about the structural affection that we have for police in the city of Detroit that I think in many instances, especially in instances like this, is misplaced when we critique and we provide a different narrative around what policy change could look like, what training could look like. I don't even know if we need to train officers. We have service organizations here in the city of Detroit that have been doing this work for years. Give them a contract. Well,
we do, and we do. But I mean, the thing is, I'm not going to train your racism out of you. I'm not going to train your hate out of you. Training is not going to fix what is structurally broken. And I think you raised a really good point about Mike Duggan. I think also it's important to reflect back that even in 1967, we had in Detroit a reformed police officer who was reporting to a reformed mayor, a police chief rather, reporting to a reformed mayor, and he really was trying to enforce reforms. And under his watch, you had the hotel. What's the name of the hotel? The Algiers Hotel. Under his watch, you had the police brutality at the Blind Pig. The problem with reforming policing is that it really is not controlled by the chief or even by the mayor. There is a culture in there that speaks to certain types of behavior over and over again, all over the world, and certainly also all over the United States. And if we're not going to get in there and figure out how to reframe things and how to fix that culture and how to hold people accountable. And of course, the thin blue line is one problem, but the police union is another. This is where unions can sometimes be detrimental when they protect public servants from being accountable to the public they are supposed to serve. There was a time when the Detroit Teachers Union did that. Teachers could get away with almost anything because union provisions kept them from being accountable. We've got to figure out how to get at this. I don't think we're going to do it anytime soon, but I think there are a lot of great ideas that reformers have put out there, and I'd love to maybe bring a reformer on in the near future so that we can have those conversations. Because if you keep on doing...
Hey, Aaron Keefe, we're talking to you.
That's
Come
right.
on.
If you keep on doing what you've always done, you're going to keep on getting the same result.
Hey, listen, guys, we have to take a quick break. We know that we said we had 2 hot takes. We're going to figure out how to get the second one in, but stay tuned, keep it locked. We're going to talk a little bit about this investment of $9 million in parking lots for neighborhood businesses. We'll be right back.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
All right, y'all, welcome back to Authentically Detroit. For Hot Takes, Detroit to invest $9 million in parking lots for neighborhood businesses. The city council approved a contract Tuesday with the Detroit Building Authority to fund the expansion of parking spaces for businesses in select neighborhoods targeted for investment by the city. Detroit planning officials said over the next 2 years, vacant land owned by the city or the Detroit Land Bank Authority will be converted into small surface parking lots adjacent to commercial corridors. The contract is being paid for with American Rescue Plan Act funding. Donna, what say you?
About almost 7 years ago when I started at ECN, I started attending meetings and people started talking about stormwater management and green infrastructure and redesigning the ordinance around parking lots. And that redesigned ordinance never came to be. But in that redesign, you saw things like bioswales and you saw things that really helped protect the climate, that protect the earth and impervious surfaces. We talked about, yes, you talked about permeable pavers. And so as the city is considering this, as these lots are going in, it's almost like we know in our left hand we should be doing this, but then we think, but we don't have time. And so we're going to put $9 million of new parking lots in. I hope and I pray that $9 million is not contributing to a combined sewer overflow issue in our community, even while we are charging people almost $600 per impervious acre per month. Because, of course, the city doesn't have to pay those fees, but the burden is then, maintained on us. So I'm concerned about the intent there. I also, I haven't seen a study that documents that there is so much business that you need parking lots in all of those areas. And so I'm hoping that City Council actually reviewed evidence that this is going to increase business traffic because a lot of parking lots also sit empty. And I think if not, it's a waste of time. There are many, many other things that people want to see happen in their neighborhoods.
This is an investment that will go in areas that have completed the city's process for neighborhood framework plans. So this is going in strategic planning, in accordance where the strategic neighborhood fund dollars are going. So East Warren will see it, Gratiot 7 Mile will see it, Northwest Grand River will see it, McNichols and San Juan will see it, and all of the other SNF neighborhoods. It's interesting to me that $9 million. $9 million just seems like a significant amount of money to invest in parking. I really do hope that our climate imperatives are top of mind when doing this.
Yeah. It would be nice if we had a director of sustainability who had the power and influence to ensure that climate is front and center in every decision.
All right, y'all. We're going to talk about this more, but we're going to transition. But before we transition, we want to let you know that if you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can always hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. This week we have a very special guest, one of my favorite people I've ever interviewed. I mean, I had a really good time interviewing Kevin Davidson, Donna's husband, who's the director of Design and Fabrication at the Charles H. Wright Museum. Detroit's Jazz, The Legacy Continues, highlights Detroit jazz musicians who also made an impact on the local, national, and international jazz scene. Wright Museum staff built Detroit Jazz as a companion to the Jazz Greats exhibit, focusing on the Detroit artists who have lived and worked among us. Amid racial segregation, these musicians express themselves and offer solace and escape through their music. This exhibit highlights a few of the many Detroit musicians and venues that influence jazz music. It's available for viewing at the Wright until February 28, 2023. Kevin, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
All right. First things first, what inspired these two jazz exhibits that are being erected at the Wright, or that have been erected at the Wright?
Well, we are, always kicking around, new ideas for exhibits that we bring in or that we build from scratch. And we were approached by Bank of America, and they have a collection of photographs by a number of significant national and international photographers featuring images of jazz greats throughout history. And so we decided to bring that in, and, we initially were asked to put it in our AT&T gallery, which is our biggest changing gallery, but the exhibit is a small exhibit, so it wouldn't fit. So we decided to put it in our medium-sized gallery, which was formerly referred to as the Chase Gallery, and create our own Detroit-focused exhibit in the AT&T gallery. Mm-hmm. And so that's pretty much how it came about.
When we talk about music in Detroit, we talk a lot about EDM music, right? We talk a lot about the legacy of Berry Gordy and Motown Records, but we don't talk a lot about jazz. Mm-hmm. What is the Detroit footprint in the jazz genre?
Let me give you a little bit of history first on that. During the turn of the century, a lot of musicians who were living in the South and living right there in New Orleans, the birthplace of jazz, were experiencing, Jim Crow following the first Reconstruction. And so, you had lynchings, black men had the opportunity to vote for the first time, and they were electing representation, going to Congress and building communities, men and women together, black communities. And there was a reign of terror that followed that, once the Union armies left the South and Reconstruction came to an end. And so Southern governments, started instituting the black codes. And probably what was most impactful was the lynchings that went on in the South that drove African Americans to the North as part of the Great Migration. And musicians followed that path, coming to Detroit. And Detroit was a safe place. So when you talk about the footprint, these musicians like the Buddy Bolden Band that came here right around 1900 from New Orleans, they got real comfortable here because, you could hang out on Hastings Street in Black Bottom, Paradise Valley at jazz clubs, and you had the Gotham Hotel and the Paradise Theater and others that were designed for black people, and their patronage was black people, and so they could escape the racism of the South, come to the North, play in these clubs, make money, make a living, and live their lives freely. And And so Detroit became a kind of incubator as a result for jazz musicians.
Right. You know, I always think about Detroit's buildup of these Black communities, these safe spaces. And, you know, we know all of Detroit wasn't safe.
Right.
But when you have people who are being, you know, forced migration, right? We look at forced migration in other nations, and it's like, oh, my goodness, these people are fleeing terror. When you have this forced migration, you're not talking about moving to utopia. You're talking about moving to a place where you are relatively more safe. But one thing that was also different about Detroit was the auto industry, right?
Absolutely.
The fact that Detroiters were able to build up a certain amount of community capital so we could maintain this, and we could actually pay to see musicians.
$5 a day.
So can you talk about the difference between, say, Detroit and some of the other places? Was there a distinction between Detroit and, say, Baltimore, or Detroit and Milwaukee, or were all northern cities the same?
Detroit had the distinction of being the home of the automotive industry. And so when Henry Ford put the call out specifically to the South, indicating that, you know, you can come here. Right now, you're making 75 cents a day, $1 a day. You can come here and make $5 a day, you know, and really make a living. And so you had Dodge and what is now GM and of course Ford Motor Company providing jobs to African Americans. And so, you know, people like my grandfather, you know, relocated from Alabama to Detroit because of jobs in the automotive industry. That's really the big distinction. And you know, we were able to build a middle class here in Detroit and buy homes and really kind of build a life that was just impossible anywhere else.
Yeah. You know, when people, I want to get it back into the jazz, but when people look at the city of Detroit and they reflect back on that period, I think they think we were all in Black Bottom in a place we were all displaced. And that displacement was horrific, and it should also be noted, right? But you also had Black people. I think at one time there were 18 Black hospitals in the city of Detroit. Right. You had a chain of Black drugstores in the city of Detroit. My mother talked about having skating rinks that were Black-owned in the city of Detroit and going to little fish shops and every other kind of business that was Black-owned in the city. And the businesses that you spoke about were all Black-owned businesses for the most part.
Right, they were.
And so there was this power building, this sense of, and you know, Detroiters are still like that, right?
Right.
We're kind of cocky. we feel like we own this city. But even when we didn't have a Black mayor, even when we were still being very segregated, there was this sense of I am in certain parts of Detroit.
That's right.
So, but I do want to hear about the musicians.
Yeah, I want to hear about the musicians, and you know, a point that you made, which is, you know, really glaring for me, is that it was Black folks that made it possible for our Southern musicians to come here and make a living.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That's blowing my mind. Right? We can make a living exploring and expressing our artistry, our improvisational artistry. I mean, when I think about jazz, I think about improvisation.
Yes.
I think about spontaneity. I
Absolutely.
think about Black. I think about, you know, a nonlinear line.
Yeah. You know, some of those people who came to Detroit, you know, in search of employment in the automotive industry, you know, started businesses. And, you know, people got together, opened those clubs, and so it became a haven, you know, for Black musicians, Black people opening clubs for Black musicians and audiences, you know.
So who were some of the innovators in Detroit?
You know, there's a family of musicians called the McKinney Cotton Pickers, you know.
Wow. The name
Yeah.
alone, my gosh. What? Okay.
And I had assumed that there was a connection between, let's say, Harold McKinney and Gayleen, his daughter, McKinney, but there is no relationship from what I understand. But, you know, he was an innovator. Those McKinney cotton pickers were innovators. His daughter right now, Gayleen, is an innovator.
She sure is.
You know, so it's like a tradition that has been passed down. And
she's our own Sheila E. in Detroit,
she
right?
is, right.
Yo, listen,
Phenomenal
Gayla
drummer.
plays those drums,
Yes,
all right?
yes, she does. Yes, she does. You know, and you know, we go out and support them, you know, at these different spots. Donna and I, you know, we love it. You know, you've got, let's say, Marion Hayden.
Yeah, Marion Hayden is a prominent feature in the exhibit. Talk a little bit about. And she's a bassist here, based here in the city of Detroit. Her children are musicians. Talk about Marion and the imprint that she has left.
Marion, you know, she's phenomenal. She is you know, the number one bassist. You know, she brings a skill level, a knowledge, a craft that's just second to none, you know. And Ron Carter, the bassist, you know, when you think about jazz and let's say John Coltrane on the saxophone, you know, it is Ron Carter on the bass, on that level. And he served as a mentor to her. You know,
it's really interesting because you've mentioned two women so far, and I want to talk a little bit about the gender diversity in the genre of jazz. When we think about women in jazz, we often think of vocalists, right? We think about Billie Holiday. We may think about Ella Fitzgerald or Pearl Bailey. You know, a lot of the greats who were vocalists, but we rarely talk about and think about women who have also pioneered on the instrumental side. Say more about that. Well, I mean, it's an intentional choice to feature Marion Hayden.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Gayleen and Marion are trailblazers, you know, because way back in the 80s, maybe even before that, they started this group called Straight Ahead. And I think Mickey Braden, who's a friend of mine, who she was involved in getting them started. You know, I used to hang out. You know, we used to hang out at, back then in the 80s.
Is that who you painted?
No, that's a saxophonist.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know, it's an all-woman group. You know, and so they have, you know, influenced others because, again, they have gone on to become mentors to men and women, and sort of raising up the next level of great male and female jazz musicians, you know, and just being out there. I think they are wonderful role models and examples for young women who are interested in getting into that craft, you know, and doing it on the level that they do it.
Yeah, you know, I don't remember everybody I knew growing up, but Michelle May actually was a Kresge Fellow, and I grew up with Michelle, and she is a violinist, and she has an all-female group, and they're all playing the strings, and so it is amazing to see the inclusion of Black women in music in Detroit. But Detroit has also been a place where you had a lot of Black women pioneers in so many ways. So what is the difference between Detroit jazz? Is there a distinction, or is it all just jazz? Is there something we did that helped innovate across the nation?
You know, the one thing that is certain is that if you're somewhere, if you're in New York, for instance, and, you know, these jazz musicians from Detroit come in there, the expectation is that they are the baddest.
I love that.
Yes.
Oh, man, I love it. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. More with Kevin Davidson on the new jazz exhibit at the Charles H. Wright Museum. When we come back, keep it locked.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the Neighborhood Tech Hub, and more. Members who are residents of the East Side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyperlocal perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
Welcome back to Authentically Detroit. We are here with the Director of Design and Fabrication for the Charles H. Wright Museum for African American History, Kevin Davidson. And we're talking about the new jazz exhibit that has been erected and that will be there until February. We were talking about the indelible footprint that Detroit has had on jazz. And before the break, you talked a little bit about the expectation on Detroit musicians, if they show up in a bar in New York or New Orleans or Baltimore or DC, we better bring that fire. Who set that bar, man? Like, I know, and you know, it's so funny. You know, I think of Detroit as really just this contemporary mecca for all kinds of platforms and art forms. Music, house music, gospel music, right? Our jazz scene. You know, I don't know if this is true, but, you know, Baker's has the title Detroit, the world's oldest jazz club. I don't know if that
it is true.
It's true.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like, we've done a lot.
Yeah,
we've done a lot.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about who was the chief curator on this exhibit and where the materials and things came from, and, you know, a major takeaway you've had in getting this thing up.
The curator's name is Jennifer Evans. And she started, you know, doing the research, really kind of involving all of us and drawing, you know, from our experiences and knowledge of jazz. Harold McKinney's wife.
This is McKinney cotton picker family?
Well, this is Harold McKinney, because the cotton pickers are a little different from.
Okay, so this is a different. Okay, who's Harold McKinney?
Yeah, Harold McKinney. You know, he was a jazz pianist who was a huge mentor for the Detroit area jazz artists, and he was an innovator in his own right. Was around Detroit a long time, and really birthed a lot of Detroit jazz musicians who worked with him. And, you know, he had people like, you know, Marcus Belgrave and others who performed with him. And, you know, they were established jazz musicians, you know, in their own right. But, you know, you create a kind of creative synergy, you know. It's something that just feeds the whole jazz scene, you know, and great musicians come out of that. Like I said, it becomes an incubator. And so you go to these clubs and, you know, there are these jam sessions that go on. And so everybody, you know, you got your acts, you come in there and, you know, you just start playing in this jam session and you start learning from the best.
We call it
it's a nice mix.
Yeah, they shedding.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's, as you know, there's a lot of controversy right now this time of year about some aspects of some of the politics. And I think sometimes that tends to overshadow some of the strengths and the resources that people can get from the museum. So I'm not going to ask you to comment on the politics, but what are some of the great things that are still happening at the Wright, the exhibits, and what are some of the changes that are coming underway that will actually help continue the the legacy of Dr. Wright?
Your mentor.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So I think beyond all of the politics, and the back and forth with all of that, we are in the process of, changing our facility. There's been a lot of investment in it. We are changing, spaces and creating spaces for families and children. So we're looking at some huge investment there. We're bringing technology and a lot more interactivity to the museum's exhibits that are coming up in the future. And so, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting, and that's really what I want you to look out for.
Yeah, I think it's important that we support our institutions, even those people.
Absolutely.
You're always going to have protests, and there's a role for protest when people want change. But I think it's important that we support our institutions. I've been around many places lately, and there is no city like Detroit that has a museum like the Wright. And it's important that all of us work together to try to make sure that what's happening there, that we're seeing it and we're supporting it and we're becoming members. And certainly, it's important that people get heard. So I'm not trying to silence anybody, but I think it is important also to understand that these changes are going to make us all look good. And you're going to be honoring new people. So there's, I don't know if you can talk about any of the future exhibits or if that's still under wraps while you are working on the marketing.
Yeah, we're still, formulating a lot of that. We just know that we want to incorporate a lot more technology and interactivity and, make exhibitions educational, immersive, and fun for the visitor. And, we've begun that process. I've been working the last few years updating our core exhibit and adding technology to that. So when you go through the core exhibit now, you'll see these air touch buttons. So it's hands off, and those are positioned where the interactives are. So we're looking at making a greater investment in technology in the core exhibit and really upgrading areas throughout the core. It's our greatest asset.
Yeah.
Let me ask one more question. You've been there for how long?
That was
40
my
years.
question. 40 years.
40
And so
years.
in that 40
pupil
years
of Dr.
time,
Wright.
a pupil
Yes,
of Dr.
right,
Wright.
Dr. Wright
You
hired
studied
me.
under him.
Yes.
And when you were honored earlier this year, they called you the Right Man. And one of the things that really moved me, as your wife, was when one of his daughters said that the museum wouldn't have survived as long as it has and would not be the museum it is without you.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to your role.
Yes.
How do you receive that? How do you receive those words? How does that resonate with you?
It's just warm and wonderful. I mean, particularly coming from his daughter, that really warmed my heart to hear that. And, you just kind of do your thing and you go on. You may not necessarily be focused on the impact that you're having. But I remember having a conversation with Dr. Wright's first wife over on the boulevard. And, she told me that they never done exhibits like what I was doing at that point, and she was one of my greatest supporters, and, I just continued from there and innovating and bringing different approaches to designing exhibitions and, just taking us higher in the process. So,
the Right Man. That's really cool.
Is the Wright still telling the same stories? Is it telling the right stories? How has it changed in that 40-year period?
I think we are still telling a lot of the same stories. Dr. Wright's focus was largely on educating African American children to their history because he felt like it was critical for them to know about themselves and know their place in the world. And so our core exhibit right now that's the focus of it. It is our history, spanning the beginning of time on through, to this day. It's significant. And so, we continue to incorporate, even when we do fine art exhibits, there is that history component that is there. So that's something that has continued on from the founding of the museum to the current time.
Before we wrap it up, I want to ask you a question about jazz, and sort of bring it full circle.
Yes.
Is jazz a dying art form? Do we see this art form being passed on from generation to generation? Are millennials taking it up? Are Gen Zers taking it up? I mean, what does the future hold for this amazing platform? Is it just a Gen X or baby boomer kind of thing, and it's going, what I mean? I don't see a lot of younger jazz musicians anymore. In my generation, there are some amazing jazz musicians in the millennial generation, but I don't. What do you think? How's it? Where does it land for you?
I think jazz is still alive. I think there's a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, mentoring that's going on with these young jazz musicians who are in college, some in high school, and there's a tradition that's continuing on. And I mentioned, a number of the people who are still mentoring these young jazz musicians. On a commercial side, there are, I really kind of refer to them as successful pockets of jazz, areas where jazz is really strong, and where there's a lot of opportunity, because there are jazz musicians. We went to the Blue Llama to see this trombonist. I cannot remember his name right now, but he's a relatively young guy selling a lot of albums, a lot of music.
Esperanza Spalding.
Yeah, exactly.
Who just left Harvard. She was teaching at Harvard.
Right.
But then you see Ralph Armstrong. And Ralph Armstrong is such a, amazing artist. And he's standing up talking about the impact of the pandemic on him. And the fact that he can't make money on Apple Music and on, all of the, online digital music. And so I think we have a need to decide if we want to preserve art. We're not investing in art. We have found a way to listen to it really inexpensively, and it's coming at the expense of artists. So he actually sold us a CD. And we had to go out and buy a CD player so we could play it. I'm not lying. It was like, okay, now what are we going to do with this? They don't put them on your computer anymore. And so when you look at the way technology is moving, it's also making it really difficult to provide the kind of support you need. And I'm not sure how you're going to get over that hump, but it's important. The Blue Llama is an amazing jazz club.
It is.
We're not building a lot of new jazz clubs. We go to Burt's and we go to
Bakers,
Cliff Bell's and Bakers and, Dirty Dog.
Dirty Dog,
but there's not a lot of venues, and I don't know what the venues are paying, but I think, as a culture, as a society, we have to decide whether music itself is worth preserving, because very few artists are making money making music. And the other thing I'm seeing, and I don't know if you're going to disagree with this, is that there are fewer black artists in jazz than there were in the past. And it may be...
I haven't been to these jazz festivals. I
mean, because I think that, when you talk about people who have to make money, maybe it becomes a kind of thing that you don't do anymore because there's not enough money in it.
Well, the other thing about jazz is, when you think about Motown, for instance, and the musicians who made the music, those were jazz artists.
That's right.
All of them. And so,
Holland Dozier Holland.
Yeah, that's right. And so a lot of the R&B we listen to, a lot of the rap
It's deeply threaded.
It's
deeply threaded.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes. It is incorporated. Yes. So it kind of has tentacles and a life of its own.
Man. Mm-hmm. Well, Kevin Davidson, I want to tell you thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
It's always a pleasure having you on, and it's always a fascinating conversation. Go see Detroit Jazz, A Legacy Continues, a new exhibit at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. The exhibit is open now through February 28th. And if you have topics that you want discussed on our podcast, hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. It is time for shout-outs. Donna Davidson, do you have any shout-outs?
Shout out to all the cooks for Thanksgiving meals. Shout out to all the families that got together, and shout out to the people who hold us accountable for the term Thanksgiving and reminding us what it really means, that we're talking about settler colonialism and that we have got to be consistent in our support. So I want to come up with a new word. In our rage. Yes. I want to come up with a new word that is not Thanksgiving. Because just like we have renamed Indigenous
Language Matters
Day, we've got to do something different so that when we are celebrating, we are not, really insulting people who were harmed by our presence.
Yeah, that's facts. Kevin, do you have any shout-outs? Shout out to Sister Cynthia.
That's my shout out right there. She hasn't had much of an opportunity, to just kind of get out and live her life because she's been taking care of others for so long. And so, she took the leap and she didn't just go around the corner. She went to Africa.
What I say to that?
A new life.
I say live, Cynthia.
Yeah, that's right.
Live.
Absolutely.
Get up and live.
Yeah.
I love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to shout out the Vault Teen Center. There is a grand opening of the Chill and Grill. What's the name of it, Donna?
Grill and Chill.
The Grill and Chill coming up this Wednesday at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
It's 6 o'clock on Wednesday. I won't be there. It's a ribbon cutting, but I teach at that time. But yes. Super shout out to Tanya Aho and the young people who wrote a grant to put in a brand new kitchen down there.
Super cool.
So it's very nice.
Yeah, and over the break, I got to hang out with two graduates of the Vault who I had grown close to when they were students at ECN, and I was still at ECN. Terry Edwards and Kareem Powell, my guys. Our kids aren't kids anymore. They're huge.
They're giants. I walked into this restaurant.
How serendipitous was that?
That was so crazy. I'm walking to the restaurant, and there's Orlando. And I didn't see Orlando. Someone says, this guy's trying to reach you behind there. And I see these two gigantic men. And so I just walked around because I didn't recognize them, all that facial. I had to look beyond the facial hair like, oh, Terry, you're a man now. But I walk around, there's Orlando. And so we took pictures. And in these pictures, I look like
a little person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just felt very small. But it was so good to see them. Can we talk about Terry for a minute?
Go ahead.
Terry, and thank you for bringing them up. Terry is, he was the first young person to ever join the Vault Teen Center. Our first event, we took a tour of kids. We took some young people to Ann Arbor. My son was at U of M, and he'd arranged this Saturday at U of M to introduce young people to the university. And so I think we were supposed to meet up there at 9 and leave, and he was there at 7. He had to wait for somebody to open the gate, and he came in, and he said, this is my house. And he claimed it before it was ever built. And we watched him grow from a kind of sometimes obnoxious teenager, as teenagers are, right? Who, loved to get attention, and he was a lot of fun, really always the life of the party, to this young man who graduated from high school, despite not knowing he would. And then going to college, he started on the football team, and certainly he's big enough to be a football player. And he is now at Mississippi Valley State University, and he is in his senior year. He'll be graduating in May. And so I said, Terry, what are you going to do when you graduate? And he said, I'm going to graduate school. Wow. I've still got 3 years of football eligibility left, and so he won't even have to pay. And I just have to say, to see somebody who knew he wanted to do something different with his life, take all the opportunity everybody gave him, and we all gave him something because he was what kind of young person who was not going to let you forget he was there. I feel like the East Side raised him, made sure he was okay, and then he did the rest. Apparently, he's got football coaches and teachers at Mississippi Valley State who have been supporting him since he's been there, continuing with mentoring. But if you ever wonder why you get up and do work, and you see a young person who never thought they had a chance, have the chance of a lifetime, and they're still succeeding, it makes it all worth it. And Kareem has a baby.
Kareem is a dad. He's loving every minute of it. TJ asked to come on the podcast. He was like, I want to come on the podcast.
Why didn't we bring him on?
And I said, absolutely, we will bring him on. He's still here in the city. So
how long is he going to be
He's here in the city until the new year, so he's on break.
So we have to bring him on. We have to bring him on. He is he's great.
Right.
Remember when he did the video when we gave him the award?
Yeah.
And he was speaking. We were sitting there crying, listening to what he was saying. He had us in straight up tears.
Yeah. Shout out to our young folks and adult folks now, man. Listen, we'll see you same time, same place next week. Until then, we want you to catch the wave.